Call the member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. And I rise today to move the motion that this House notes, one, that the per- and polyfluorinated alkyl substances contamination emanating from the RAAF base, Williamtown, is now extending far beyond the area known as the red zone. Two, it notes that a couple in the suburb of Fullerton Cove have very high levels of firefighting chemicals in their blood, and that a mother has discovered elevated levels in her young child. Three, notes that there are 533 residents in this suburb and urges the New South Wales EPA to expand the so-called red zone as a matter of urgency. And in doing so, I must acknowledge that I moved this motion 6 months ago, and since that time, Williamtown Red Zone has been expanded a very little to include small parts of Fullerton Cove. It gives me no pleasure to advise the House of this of the issues before us, but it is important to recognise that the contamination coming from the base is moving further into the electorate of Newcastle and affecting certainly my community in Fullerton Cove. And I must say it's very disappointing that the government at the end of last year was proposing to disband the elected members group and outsource the community consultation group, looking to outsource it to a private consultant, in fact. And after much noise from myself and my colleague here, the member for Port Stephens and other Hunter members, the government has seen some sense on this. But it has been very disappointing in terms of the response from this minister. Both myself and the member for Port Stephens did invite the minister up. We were not notified of this visit. In fact, I was quite shocked to know, I had to read about it again in the newspaper, that the minister was visiting. I wasn't invited to that meeting. In fact, the meeting didn't even occur in the main area. I believe it occurred in the government office in Newcastle, in my electorate, and after I'd invited the minister, I wasn't even notified, or invited in fact, which I find quite appalling. But, you know, it does follow a pattern. We have had pretty severe erosion at Stockton, and I haven't seen the minister up there looking at that. We've got the plastic bags haven't even been outlawed in terms of single use in this state, not like many other states and places around the country. We've had the recycling system has been completely botched, and now we've also had the contamination in Newcastle, not just Williamtown, that's also been completely ignored by this minister as well. So there is a bit of a pattern here, a very distinct pattern, and I'm sure the government will see the error of its ways soon enough. In fact, back to the notice of motion, which does talk about the expansion of this of the polyfluorinated alkyl substances, the community in Williamtown and Fullerton Cove actually were telling the government 2 years ago, 2 years prior to this event, that this issue was affecting them, and they might want to actually respond. It took them 2 years to respond to this issue and to those residents' concerns. And in fact, they had the very simple, logical explanation. That's the topography. The topography. Well, if you look at the topography, maybe you will see that large cloud will no doubt move underground toward that area, number one. And number two, if you look at all the drains in the area, you'll also see that that is very much the case. So it was quite shocking, as I said before, to think that the government was thinking of outsourcing and decreasing its involvement with the community consultation group, given they have such important local knowledge and contributions to make. So quite appalled at that option the government was looking at. And we have had 50 residents living on one stretch of road up in this area being diagnosed with cancer. And there is an absolute fury in the red zone. If you only have to drive up there, as I do quite often, and my colleague here, the member for Port Stephens, and you see the huge signs outside people's houses that all the holiday makers, when they're going from Sydney up to Port Stephens, also see, which is a very good thing, because these people are hurting so badly, and their lives have been devastated. And it's not just the incredible loss of value of their houses. They can't even get a loan to put a garage or a lean-to on the back of their house, in fact. And, it is good they're putting up signs, and it's good that they're trying to hold this government to account as we are,
Order.
because they are absolutely
Member for
devastated.
Newcastle. Order. It being 1:30, business is interrupted, and I will now leave the chair until 2:15. Thank you.